Alrighty, let's talk about osmosis. Before I tell you anything about osmosis, I wanted to let you know that in general, there are going to be three types of osmosis questions. Now, this is important. Questions about osmosis will follow you into your nursing program or your PA program, and probably will also be on the exam that you take when you do your license for nursing or whatever health career you go into. So this is not a concept that goes away. And I'm going to tell you that once you learn it, you're going to think, it's not that bad, okay? Yeah, that's the best we can hope for. Not that bad. So there are three types of osmosis question. The first type of osmosis question is going to be definitions of osmosis. So you should know that osmosis is a type of diffusion. Okay, it's a type of diffusion. You should know that osmosis will only happen when there is a selectively permeable membrane or a semi-permeable membrane. All right. Osmosis also will only happen when some solute is trapped on one side of that membrane. It is a type of passive transport. Okay, I think that's all I got about osmosis. Okay, so that'll be one set of questions that you need to answer about osmosis. And it is passive because it is powered by diffusion. You know, all atoms and molecules want to go from the side of the membrane where they are more crowded to the side of the membrane where they are less crowded. Water wants that too. It's just that water is the solvent, and we almost never think about the concentration of solvent molecules. That's the problem. Okay, so that's one type of question. What is the next type of question? The next type of question is going to be these things. What is hypertonic? What is hypotonic? What is isotonic? Those kind of questions. All right. I will give you two different options for how to learn these terms. And when I give you those options, I want to emphasize just pick one. Don't try and learn them both. Just pick one way of learning hypertonic, hypotonic, isotonic, and then stick with it, okay? Now, you have to know hypertonic, hypotonic, isotonic to be able to answer questions about which way will the water move, okay? Now, I say the third type of question is which way will the water move? But that's not the way the question gets phrased. The question might get phrased something like, well, do you expect the dialysis tubing bag to gain weight or lose weight, right? But you're asking, which way will the water move? Those are the three types of questions. Let's tackle them, all right? First of all, osmosis, a special type of diffusion. Sorry, I'm kind of in my way. There we go, okay? A special type of diffusion, and it is the movement of water across or through a selectively permeable membrane from regions of higher concentration to regions of lower concentration. All right. See, this is what gets everyone confused. Okay. Just by saying from regions of higher concentration, you're thinking higher concentration of solute, but no. Water is a molecule. Water has a concentration too, right? So don't let this explanation confuse you, okay? This is what confuses people. Water moves towards the region where there's more solute, okay? So here we've got on the right side, we've got only 4 solutes. On the left side, we've got 8 solutes. So we know that if the solute, in this case, it's a protein molecule, we know the solute would like to move from the left side to the right side. It would like to. But this is a selectively permeable membrane, and it says, no, you may not pass, okay? Now, if we were going to count up all the little blue water molecules, we would find that there are more water molecules on the right than on the left. So the tricky way that osmosis gets phrased is there's a higher concentration of water molecules on the right than on the left. So if the solute cannot move, the water molecule, the solvent, will move. Oh, one more thing about definitions of osmosis is osmosis generates force. It generates pressure. It is a force. Okay, that's supposed to say pressure. Not sure it looks like that. Okay, so passive transport of water across a selectively permeable membrane from regions where water is in higher concentration to where water is in lower concentration. Yes, when I add sugar into water, I dilute out my water. Yeah, I know. It doesn't make any sense. That's why it's hard, but it doesn't have to be hard. Okay. There are two different ways of learning hypertonic, hypotonic, isotonic, right? Two different ways. This is option one. If you like option one, stick with option one and just like fast forward across the next option, okay? All right, so hypertonic. The way these terms came about is in medicine, anything hyper is too much. Like a hyperactive kid is like, oh, that kid is too much, okay? Hyper always means too much. So the way this word hypertonic got its name is hypertonic means it has too much solute, okay? And hypo in medicine always means not enough. So, sorry, not sure why that didn't show up. So the hypotonic side has got not enough ions or molecules, whatever the solute is. And iso means the same. Iso has the same concentration. Here's just one important thing you can remember. If there is any kind of solution being compared to water, water is always the hypotonic one. Water would be oops, that doesn't work. Hypotonic to anything except more water. Okay, so H2O, O for hypotonic. Okay, and so you think to yourself, okay, if water's hypotonic, well, if something just has that it has no solute in it, right? So then you'll always know that water is the standard for being uber hypotonic. And if you compare anything with water, whatever that solution is the hypertonic one. Because everything has got more of a concentration of solute in it than pure water does. Okay, so this is option one. This is option two. Option two, the hypertonic one is the side that is less like pure water, and the hypotonic one is the one that's more like pure water. And you can learn it this way because there's an E in hypertonic and there's an E in less. There's an O in hypotonic. It's in the wrong place. And there's an O in more. Sorry, it was supposed to go right there and it didn't stop. Okay, so remember though, the hypotonic one is always water because what is more like pure water than water? Nothing, okay? And of course, isotonic is the same wateriness. So two ways to learn it: do not cross over. Because if you cross over, you'll end up hypertonic less solute in it, you'll get everything exactly wrong. So you got to pick one. Okay? And if you pick this one, don't just learn hypertonic less. Don't. You've got to learn hypertonic less like pure water. Got to do the whole sentence. But by the way, hypotonic water. Okay? Now, these terms, hypertonic, hypotonic, they are comparison words. Let's think of a cup of coffee. If I asked you, is your cup of coffee warmer? You would say, well, compared to what? It's warmer than I am. It's colder than when I poured it in the cup. How can one cup of coffee be warmer and colder? Because those are comparison words. Isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic are also comparison words. Now, that might be confusing to people who are in the medical field. Why? Because once you're in the medical field, the unsaid comparison is always going to be to the concentration of solute inside of human cells. So there is always a comparison. But still, for all of our physiology classes, we're always comparing it to something. In medicine, you'll always be comparing it to human cell concentration of solute. But I can say solution A is hypertonic to B, but B is hypertonic to C. B is hypotonic compared to A, and B is hypertonic compared to C. They're comparison words. All righty. Now, which way will water osmose? It always goes from hypo to hyper. Always. Here's another way to remember it. Here, let's see if I can draw a raisin. Here is a squiggly up little raisin. I take a raisin, I drop it into my glass of water. Bink! What happens? This was pure water, so this was hypotonic. Here's my raisin. My raisin is almost all solute. It's almost all sugar, almost no water. So this will be the hyper. I drop that little thing in a glass of water. Which way does the water move by osmosis? Into the raisin. You can always remember that, right? If you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I don't know, just think, oh, if I drop a raisin in a glass of water, well, is the water hypo or hyper? Oh, I hope by now you've memorized that the water is always the hypo, right? Okay. And the water is going to go into the raisin. And now you know why. By osmosis. Okay. So those are going to be the three kinds of questions. Now, remember that osmosis generates force. And so if I take a happy little red blood cell and I drop it into a hypotonic solution, water will go from the hypotonic side, the solution, into the cell. When I said I put the cell into a hypotonic solution, I implied that the solution inside of the cell was hypertonic compared to the solution outside. So water is going to move into the cell. And as a matter of fact, if you put red blood cells into water, they will fill up with water so much that they'll actually pop. Popping of red blood cells is called lysis or lysing. Okay. If I take red blood cells and put them into a hypertonic solution, the water will leave the cell. And when the water leaves the cell, it is called crenation. Crenation. And this is down here. This is what it would look like on the microscope. This cell's still pretty happy. This cell's like losing his water. That cell's ready to give up the ghost. Why is this concept going to follow you into your nursing program or your PA program or whatever? Because whenever medical professionals are administering injections to patients, particularly intravenously, they have to be isotonic solutions. They have to be. If your patient was terrifically dehydrated, you could give them glasses of water to drink. That would be fine. But if your patient was terrifically dehydrated and you gave them water intravenously, you would cause their red blood cells to fill up with water and pop, and you would get fired, okay? And you might kill your patient. So that's why it's very, very important. All right, the last video is up to you. We're just going to go over questions about diffusion and osmosis. Hope I see you there.